Vamos dar início então ao painel.
Sorry.
Vamos então dar início ao painel da cooperação. Da Cooperação para o Desenvolvimento do Atlântico e Crescimento Azul.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start in about 2 minutes' time, because I'd like all of you who are sitting at the back and on the two sides to move into the middle, please. We want to have a discussion later, and the panelists would like to be able to look you all in the eyes when we have that discussion. Eye contact is the best way of creating dialogue. So 1 minute break while you all move in, please. Squeeze up in the middle, pretend you like each other, and we'll have a good discussion. Don't be shy over there on the left. All right, thank you very much. First of all, my apologies for having to speak to you in English. My Portuguese is limited to a primitive understanding of the menu in a restaurant. My name is John Richardson. I'm a former EU Commission official. Spent 35 years with the European Commission. And my last task at the European Commission was to head the task force which developed the integrated maritime policy of the European Union. I then left the Commission 5 years ago and have since been working as a consultant and as a fellow with the German Marshall Fund of the United States, which is a sort of transatlantic think tank. In that last context, the German Marshall Fund produced a book which I edited called The Fractured Ocean. João next to me is holding this up. You can look at it afterwards. It's about the challenges that we face in maritime policy in the wider Atlantic. And we're going to have a discussion on something related to that this morning. But just a word first about the video you've just seen. Wasn't it terrific? I mean, what came over for me there was the sheer power of the ocean, the power of those waves. And that means two things. It means that safety is always hugely important on the oceans, and it means that the oceans are full of energy. That energy is one of those blue growth areas in the oceans which we're going to be looking at. And the word mystical was also used. When we produced our green paper on European maritime policy, we surprised people by using the words romance and dreams in the first two paragraphs. And mystical is another way of putting the same thing. I think all those connected with the oceans in some way are captured by this magic. And I think that's true for all your panelists here today, who I now want to introduce before we get started. We have first Mark Spalding, the bearded gentleman second from my right. Beforehand, he laughingly described himself to me as a failed lawyer and a failed academic. He's not that. That simply means that he comes at the oceans from the point of view of someone who knows the law, who knows maritime law, who knows the oceans and what they need. And he's now president of the Ocean Foundation in the United States, whose job it is to try and help to make sure that blue growth on the oceans is indeed sustainable, leaves the ocean ecosystems intact. So I'm thinking of him in our discussion this morning as the sort of conscience of the panel. Next to me, we have Samuel Kame-Damgui, who's with the African Union Commission, the African Union counterpart of the European Commission for which I worked. So good morning, colleague. Samuel is a former naval officer. He's been on the seas. He knows what it's like to be on the seas. In other words, he has practical experience, which so many people who talk about the oceans don't have. And he's in charge of the maritime strategy of the African Union, which he's going to tell us about this morning. On my left side, we have João Fonseca Ribeiro, who many of you will know. He's the Director General of Maritime Policy in Portugal, and I would put it this way: he's, for me, the driving spirit and the driving force behind the very important Portuguese contributions to the development of European Union maritime policy, and now to the pushing of an integrated maritime policy to be helpful in the South Atlantic as well. On my far left, although I'm not sure whether he would describe himself as that politically, we have Armando Marques Guedes, who is a professor of law and international politics in Portugal. That's what it says on the program, so I guess it's right. But he's not just that. He's a very good friend, and he's an enthusiast of the oceans, and he's an enthusiast about government action in the ocean, and he's an optimist that things can get better. And you will hear from him this morning some of his reasons why things need to be done on the southern oceans if we're to make sense, in particular, of development in Africa. And he will contribute, I think, a sense for us of the gravity of some of the challenges that we're dealing with. And then we have at the far end Carlos Manuel Rocha, who's the only person on the panel actually involved in business in the Atlantic. And he's the CEO of CV Investments in the Cape Verde Islands. And he's going to give us a businessman's point of view here, and do so from the point of view of a Portuguese speaker from the Cape Verde Islands. And I think he'd also give us then some feeling for the importance of the Lusophone community in the South Atlantic and the potential it has for helping us to bridge the Atlantic through using the bridges between Portuguese-speaking nations. So that's our panel this morning, and I think we should start off. We'll keep our conscience for later. Maybe we should start off with João Fonseca Ribeiro. João, over to you. And please, the speakers may choose whether they speak from here or whether they go across to the lectern afterwards.